Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nick and Sanjee Podcast, where we share our tips and tricks on how to start and grow a YouTube channel as Nick and I go on this journey. Welcome back, Nick, episode 14. How are you today?
I'm good. Feeling good that we made it to episode 14. I'm sure we've got many more to come, but yeah, it's a good effort, I reckon. So congratulations.
Thank you, and same to you, Nick. And episode 14 is going to be quite an exciting one because we're going to be talking about how we use AI in our content creation process. And I say we, it's probably more so you, Nick, because I think you're a lot more ahead on this one. But I'm looking forward to hearing from you about some of the tips and tricks that you have on it. So to kick off, Nick, I thought we'd just ask, in terms of your current content creation process, give us a high-level idea of where you're using AI along the journey.
So at the moment, I've been sort of dabbling in it since the start of the year, and I've managed to incorporate it in kind of the main segments of my content creation process. So I use it at the start for ideation and scripting and that type of thing. A lot of the writing side, like writing in AI, is really good, I've found so far. And then a little bit in the actual content itself, a little bit. I've experimented with like some AI backgrounds and that type of thing. Editing, it's good for editing. I found it good for editing short form clips. So I generally turn most of my long form videos into short form. And as anyone who's edited short form content knows, it can be quite time consuming and tedious. So AI has helped me to streamline that process a bit. And that's what I find with AI in general, honestly. It just helps to streamline, make things more efficient, helps you out creatively with like, if you're a bit stuck for creative ideas. And then thumbnails as well. I've actually started using it in my thumbnails more regularly. So yeah, kind of a bit of here and there in like the main segments of creating a video.
I'm going to give you a question without notice on this one, Nick, but I think just so we can sort of show people the value of AI early, if we zoom in on AI and short form videos and how you said, and I agree, like editing any video is the bane of my existence on any content creation journey. But especially if you want to do a short form video, which is typically 30 seconds to a minute, and the amount of effort that you put in just to get that edited, can you give us an idea of how long it would typically take you to edit a short form video yourself versus how long it would take you to do one with AI?
I've found it depends a little bit on the type of video. So the main short form platform I'm using is called Opus Clip. So it's just opus.clip. And they've got a free version and a paid version. But yeah, I found it depends on the type of video. So if it's a more simple talking head video, it's really good, and it does, it can do a clip. You just put the video into the system. It takes about 10 minutes to process, and then it'll spit out like 6 to 10 different short form clips from your long form video, and it will rank them according to what it thinks are the most effective to kind of least effective. So if you do just that, do like 10 minutes, which to cut up, manually cut up 10 short form clips yourself would probably take, I don't know, anywhere from half an hour to an hour, depending on how quick you are. It would definitely take me probably an hour, something like that. So it saves a lot of time if you're just doing simple stuff like that. I found, because I put a lot of B-roll in my videos, it tends to sometimes get a little bit confused with the B-roll, and then it will cut at weird moments. So what I find I tend to do is I'll run my video through Opus Clip, and then it will give me a good idea of some places to start in terms of cutting out my own short form content. And that takes a lot of the guesswork and sort of like thought process of trying to figure out which parts of my long form video are going to work as short form clips, if that makes sense. So it saves me a lot of time in terms of thinking about, which part of my video should I cut up. So again, that's what I'm finding with AI in general, is that it just really helps to streamline things, make things more efficient. It doesn't necessarily replace you, at least it hasn't yet, I don't think. It's not going to completely replace all the work you have to do, but it just, makes it more efficient. So yeah.
Great. Okay. So, and that's good. You called out Opus Clips. So let's keep calling out the companies and the platforms we're using just to give people ideas along the way. So I appreciate we're jumping around a bit, but let's go on to, I think you were saying you use it for ideation and scripting and things like that. So can you walk us through a bit on that in terms of how you're using AI for those key steps?
Yeah, so this is probably the biggest area I've found AI to be useful so far, like the most useful. And it's probably partly because like ideation and scripting is kind of one of my weaker areas, which it's another reason why I think AI is just a great tool for anyone getting started in content. Because if you don't have a lot of background and you have weaker areas, stronger areas,
Yeah.
yeah, like script writing, ideation can be tricky. And so I find it's a great place to just get ideas, get the juices flowing, I guess, and have a good base to spring from. So the
Mm-hmm.
main ones I've used is ChatGPT, which is like the most famous one, and
Yep.
then Google Bard as well is another free
Yep.
one. That's quite good, and they're improving it continually as well. I find Google Bard is really good for research. I'm jumping around a bit, but
Yep.
I guess the start of any video would be research. So the good thing about Bard is that it's connected to the internet up to date, whereas GPT is only up to date till I think 2021, I think it is.
21. Yeah. Yep.
So any data after that, it doesn't technically have. So if I'm researching, I tend to use Google Bard, but also we use ChatGPT, and that'll just give me, again a good place to start where I can start to build my own scripts.
Mm-hmm.
And then also there's kind of two ways I use AI with ideation and scripting stage. It's kind of like if I'm totally stuck for ideas, I'll go to ChatGPT or
Mm-hmm.
Bard and ask it for a bunch of ideas, and that will just give me, like I said, like a springboard to sort of get past that block.
Yep.
And then the second thing I'll use it for is for refining content or scripts that I've created myself. So once I've got those ideas, creative ideas of like video concepts, stuff like that, then I'll go away and write my own script, or I
Yep.
might just do an outline of a script. Then
Yep.
I'll take it back to ChatGPT, put it in there, and then it'll help me to refine it, which is another really strong point I think of AI, is like helping you to refine, helping to make it clearer. And I continue to do that to this day. Like almost all my scripts I'll put back into AI and ask it for
Yep.
feedback, ask it for advice, ask it how I can make things clearer. And I think that's one of the big things that I found with AI when I first started playing around with it, is I kind of expected it to do all the work for me. I was like, I'll just type in, give me a script on such and such, and then expect it to spit out an amazing script. And I was disappointed quite quickly because it gave me bad results. But I think the thing to remember is the more data you put into it, the better it's going to give you, like better results it's going to give you basically. So I think if anyone is just getting started, just remember the kind of the quality of the content you get out of AI is the quality of the content you put into it, and the more information you can give it, the better results you're going to get. And the final point I'll make on that is just with GPT in particular, they just introduced a feature maybe a month ago or something like that, where you can save a bunch of information about yourself just on the platform, and then it will always reference that in any future conversations you have with ChatGPT.
Okay.
So I just put in, like I'm a content creator. My goals with AI is to use it to help me with content creation. I have a podcast. I've got a YouTube channel. These are my goals. Even I heard someone this morning talking about how you should put in your ideal customer, because again, the more information you're giving, the chatbot, the better it's going to be able to correctly give you what you're looking for.
Okay, great. Wow, there is a lot to go into, but I feel like you've given us a lot of ideas on how I've got a lot of ideas in there as well. If I take a moment just to zoom out, the version of ChatGPT you're talking about, is that a free or paid one just for starters?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a free one, paid one.
Yep.
I just pretty much use the free one.
Yep.
I had the paid one for I think 2 months, but I found the only real benefit to the paid one is that it's slightly better at certain tasks, a lot of which aren't really related to content creation. Like the paid one is better with scripting and programming. And you also get priority in the processing of requests. So if you
Okay.
use the older version of ChatGPT, if you're paid, it's faster. But
Okay.
I've honestly found the free version is pretty much just as good for the
Yeah.
type of stuff we need it for.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Nick, you mentioned script writing and script creation because that was a good point for me as well. Because I've sort of dabbled with Chat GPT in terms of saying, starting from a blank canvas, saying, can you write me a script? Or I might have said, can you write me talking points? But I probably said, can you write me a script for a YouTube video? I think I said, that's 6 minutes long on the history of currency in Australia. That's something I thought I do want to make a video on, but I was a bit lazy to do the research myself. And it gave me maybe 10 lines of dot points, and that was really it. And then I said, can you make this a 10-minute video? And it said, sure, here's a 10-minute video, but it didn't really change what it had given me. So I agree with your point around it really depends on what you put into it. Like if you ask it to go completely from scratch, it does struggle a bit. So I was going to ask you, when you've said you've created a schedule, when you've created a script and you've asked it to refine it for you or to make it clearer, very high level example, what has it actually given you back? Does it end up changing a couple of words? Does it actually add more points in? Or when you ask for feedback, what are you literally seeing it give back to?
Yeah. So like, I think the thing I've found as I've experimented with it is kind of treating it like almost like a person, in the sense of, there's got to be sort of back and forth. Because I think, again, like you're saying, I when I first started using it, I would just type something in, expect it to give me, something in particular, even though I hadn't really described super clearly what I wanted. And so when it comes to refining scripts that I've already created, I'll put it in, and then I might ask it a question like, can you give me feedback on this? And try and be as specific as possible. I think that's the other thing that I'm finding is the more specific you are, the better it's going to be. So can you give me points on how I could literally just say like how I can make this clearer? Or I think, again, I really want to start putting in more my target audience, because then it really does start to tailor it more specifically towards, whoever you're trying to aim it at. And the other thing is, I think when it comes to like extending scripts out, again, like you said, you asked it to make this script 10 minutes rather than 6 minutes or whatever. I find saying things, again, really specific, like, can you expand those dot points into paragraphs or something like that, rather than just saying, give me a longer script, say, expand those, like even with YouTube descriptions is a common one I'll use ChatGPT for. I'll just put the transcript of my video into ChatGPT and say, give me a YouTube description. And sometimes it'll give me like 2 lines and I want something a bit more substantial. So I say, can you make this more detailed, make it like a paragraph and a half? And then it will give me that exact thing. And in the other direction, even I've asked it, like I'll put in a bunch of text that I've written and I'll say, just give this to me in dot points, because sometimes I'll be trying to communicate something in my videos and I find, I'm not sure how you use script your videos, but I tend to just use dot points and then try and talk out of the dot points. So sometimes I'll just sort of put all of my thoughts, into a Notion page, sort of unedited, and then I'll put that into ChatGPT and ask it to break it down into dot points that I can then use as a script when I'm filming my video.
Okay. Yeah, I'm similar. I do go off the dot points, and I think we know our content quite well, that we're quite comfortable saying give a dot point, and then we know what to say. And also, I think some of my videos are a little bit technical in terms of it's too much effort to actually write it down. It's easy if I just talk off a dot point. But that is interesting. And I like the idea of actually just saying, can you turn this into a paragraph? Because that's such a simple thing to say to it. And I'm sitting here saying, just make it longer. What I actually do want is a paragraph. I want to see a paragraph, or maybe I can say, give me more dot points. You've given me 5. Can you give me 7? That kind of thing. I do remember asking it to give me the references for it, and it didn't do that. That was, I think, ChatGPT
Yeah.
version. So I'll need to try that out with Bard, because I think it's not always the case, but there's probably going to be some videos where it'd be handy if we did have a reference, but that's just us being lazy. But it's weird, like we're in this new world where
Yeah.
it's not necessarily just being lazy asking the AI to do something. It's kind of being efficient.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing that a lot of people maybe misunderstand about AI. They think it's just, a robot that's going to be able to do all your work for you. But I think at least where it's at the moment, maybe in the future it'll become that, But where it is at the moment, I think you just got to look at it as another tool, like that can help you with creativity, that can help you with efficiency, help you with communication, whatever it is. And I think that's where the real power of it is. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's keep going through the workflow, and I think we've touched on this a little bit. But so you've scripted the video, you've recorded the video, and now you're going into editing. Where does AI play a part in there?
Well, I think for me in my current workflow, the short form clips is probably the main one that I use semi regularly. But I have experimented with generating backgrounds in AI. So I'm releasing a video tonight on how to do it yourself. It's like a tutorial video. So
Great.
it's pretty cool. Like I've seen other people do it, and I think it's especially useful if you're relatively new to content creation, or even if you've been doing it for a while and you don't feel like you have a particularly interesting backdrop to film against. And I've had a few people ask me like, how do I set up my studio? How do I set up my environment behind me to look good? Especially even if you're like, you're still just living in a small apartment or something like that, have a great space. This is a great way to do it. All you have to do is film your video against something blank, like a blank wall. And then you can take a screenshot of your video, take it into something like Adobe Firefly, which is still free. It's still got a free version. Or if you've got Photoshop obviously is really great as well. Anything with like a generative fill feature. And then you just remove like the part of your image around where you're sitting, and then literally just generate a background. So you can pretty much like your imagination is the limit pretty much. You can put in anything. Like I've put in like give me a sci-fi scene in outer space, or just like I want to be in a cafe somewhere, or I want to be in a nice home office. Like there's all sorts, like just whatever you can think, whatever you want. Export that generated image, drag it back into your editing software, add a mask. All you have to do is just add a mask so that your video pops through, and there you go. You've got this amazing generated background, and it looks so realistic. Like you can barely tell. I think if you're really looking, you might be able to tell, but on first glance, it looks like a legit, real, studio that you're sitting in. So I think that's a really great opportunity, particularly for newer content creators. And then like I said, with editing, mainly short form clips, but I have seen other plugins that you can get, particularly for Premiere Pro, that can cut up multicam podcast episodes. So for us, we obviously just do it through Riverside Online, so it's not as relevant. But if you're filming multicam podcast episodes, or even just a talking head YouTube video, you can literally get plugins that you can watch it like cut up the video for you, and it will take 5 minutes, which would normally take you hours to do. So there's definitely options out there, and they continue to develop more editing tools, and they're getting better. So that's kind of how I incorporate it into my editing.
Wow, there's again a lot of amazing things in there. I'm going to zoom in on just one thing, because I wonder if people will be asking the same thing in their heads. Is looking forward to your video and we'll make sure we'll have to put some kind of link to your video about how to do the AI background. I'm curious, like, does it look? You said it looks fine, but what about obviously there's a lot of work in making sure the lighting to your face is good. How do these things adjust for the lighting of your background? Like, does it feel like there's still, when you're in a Zoom meeting or you're in a Teams meeting and you can tell it's a fake background in the background because the lighting's all off, the shades are all off. But are you saying with these AI things, it's a little bit better, or you still need to do a bit of work to try and get like your face to be of the same kind of lighting shade to the background?
No, honestly, that's one of the craziest things I've found about AI generated imagery is the lighting. Particularly, I mean, the main one I've used, I've tried using Midjourney a little bit,
Yep.
and what was the other one I used? Stable Diffusion I've used a little bit as well, but the main one I've had the most experience with is Adobe's generative fill, and the lighting is just like, that's what gets me every time because it somehow understands the lighting in the scene and just recreates it perfectly. So
Wow.
for example, like the one I do in my tutorial video, I have my key light, I think it's like on this side, right? So I have my key light coming down. You can see clearly on my face. I've got some soft shadows on this side of my face. You can see the direction of the lighting, and then I'll ask Firefly to generate some images, and I'll a few times I put in a prompt saying, add an aesthetic looking lamp in the background. And it will literally create a lamp in the exact same position where my key light was, because it knows that's where the source of the light was coming from. So you honestly can't tell.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
the lighting is flawless. Like, and it will create the whole scene pretty much based on your lighting. So I think that's one thing to remember if you are thinking about doing this or you want to try it out. Your lighting will directly affect what images the AI generates. So,
Yep.
if you've got like a bright rim light, like a red rim light behind you, it's gonna create probably some sort of lighting effect behind you that's red to try and replicate and incorporate that into your scene. So it looks it looks crazy. Like, you can't tell.
Amazing. Okay. Well, no, I can't wait. We're already touching on the fact that there is, as it is now, you do have to jump between platforms and programs. But I think, yeah, it sounds like it's just a matter of time before all this stuff is built into itself. And yeah, it's one click to say you just record with a blank wall, and then you say, turn this into this, and then bang, it will do it. You push another button, it gives you all your 10 to 30-second clips. You push another
Yeah.
button, and it gives you a new background and keeps going.
Yeah. That's crazy, honestly. It's pretty scary to think where it'll be in like 5 or 10 years,
Okay, well, let's keep going through your workflow. So you've created the video, you've created the edit. Now we're going into the upload process, the second bane of my existence, which is the thumbnail and the titles and descriptions
Yeah.
and everything. How are you using AI in that space?
Yeah, so same for me. Definitely a less enjoyable part of the process. Especially, I've found the description is always like, oh man, I have to write a whole description now. But again, like I said earlier, I think I literally just take the transcript of the video, paste that into ChatGPT, and ask it to give me a description, and it will give me really good descriptions. I can just edit that in ChatGPT depending on the results it gives me. So that's really handy. Same with titles. Obviously, you do this at the start. I'll try and create my titles at the start before I actually film the video. But again, I'll often do research for what is working out there already, and then I'll have a list of different title ideas, put that into ChatGPT, ask it for feedback, ask it what it thinks will work best, and refine it using AI in that way. And then thumbnails. So there's a couple of things that I've found it really useful for. One is cleaning up photos that you're using for your thumbnail that you've taken yourself, or even like, stock images. So for example, I used to spend a lot of time cleaning up my studio before I'd take an image for a thumbnail.
Yep.
And that was always time consuming and, a bit of a drag. But now, as long as it's relatively clear, it can't be completely messy, but as long as it's relatively clear, you can just remove any objects that you want in Photoshop, for example, Photoshop using generative AI. Even for thumbnails that I've done of my desk setup, often I'll have some messy cables might be hanging out the bottom or on my desktop or something like that. Just drag a circle around them, tell it to delete the the cable. It looks so much cleaner. Like it just cleans up your thumbnails, make them look sharper, more professional. So that's one thing, and the second thing is just to generate entirely new elements in your images. So, trying to think of some specific examples. I redid one of my thumbnails recently that had an image of my desk or me sitting at my desk, and I used it to remove kind of half of my desk that wasn't fitting in the thumbnail, and it was like cluttering it a bit. So it just looked like it just basically turned my desk into a smaller desk. And then I added like a coffee cup on the desk that was related, and just stuff like that. Even one thing I was thinking about is often in thumbnails these days, you have people pointing at things.
Yep.
And if you don't have that included in your original image, you could probably generate, an arm pointing at something.
Yeah.
I think hands is something it still struggles with a little bit, but stuff like that. Like, I think elements that maybe you can't get a photo of, or you didn't think to take in the moment. It just saves you so much time.
Yeah,
fits in really well.
Okay. And so if we just zoom in, it's Adobe Photoshop, generative fill, and is that it's part of the standard Photoshop suite? Because I think when I was looking into it a while ago, it was like still in beta testing. So I'm just curious, is that now just anyone can just get Photoshop and click and this will be available?
Yeah, so it's obviously paid. You get the paid plan, but it's got they've got two different versions of Photoshop that are included in that plan. So you got the beta version and the regular version. So the regular version doesn't have the generative AI yet, but the beta version does. So I just use the beta version all the time. Like it's exactly the same as the regular Photoshop. It's just got the extra AI built in.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I think I have seen that, and I have the standard subscription. I just assumed it was in the standard version, but that makes sense. So I'll go and download that, because that will be very handy. Because my thumbnails are the one thing that saves me a little bit with thumbnails is I always take the picture immediately after I've recorded the video. Yep. So it's kind of good in that sense that my room is I've done all the work to make it clean already. Yep. But I'm now at the stage. So I was going to ask you this bit is, so say I have a video where I'm talking about inflation and like staying up to date with inflation in terms of your salary, so not falling behind. And I'm curious, so I want the video to be of me just in front of my background, but I'm wondering if it can juice up the video a bit, add some new icons and things like that. Could I I'm guessing I can't use generative AI for that unless I know exactly what I want, but is there another platform or another way where I can give it my picture in its kind of raw form, like, me just standing or sitting there pointing at nothing in particular and saying, I need a YouTube thumbnail and the topic is this. Can you make something out of this? Is that something that's possible now?
I'm not aware of anything that does that yet, but I have no doubt it's in development, because there's all sorts of AI stuff that's in development. Even ChatGPT, I think next week, like it's pretty soon, they're releasing a new feature that enables it to analyze images. So you could, in theory, put your thumbnail into, your basic image into ChatGPT and say, give me an outline of how I could turn this into a really good thumbnail. It will tell you what to do. You might have to go and do it yourself, but at least it'll give you some information. But yeah, when it comes to generating like 2D stuff, like icons and stuff, I haven't really experimented with that. So that could be worth looking into. I know that I'm pretty confident there are platforms out there already online that do specifically use AI to generate icons. So that's a possibility.
Man, where it ends up putting the onus back on you for not doing the work to think of how to make your thumbnail better. Yeah. It really does, doesn't it? Because before it'd be like, oh, it's too much effort, Nick, for me to, go out and get an icon, or I got to clean up the background. It's too much. Now it's like, no, Sanj, that's a 10-second job for you. You now need to think more clearly about what you want.
Yeah, that's a good
And
point.
yeah, yeah. There's no excuse for not creating your own scripts or even having an outline of a script.
Mm,
You
mm,
start with ChatGPT, next thing you know, this stuff will be in notes
yep.
on Apple Notes, and oh my goodness. So yeah, there's something about there's something in here in this AI world where it's basically putting the onus back on the content creator, saying it's actually right back on you to do the work. It's not extra work in terms of what you have to do on the tools. It's just you need to now think through so much more and be like, what
Mm,
exactly do you want? And we will
mm,
create it for you. You've got this entire army of a team behind you saying, just give us something to do and it'll
yeah.
cost you nothing. But, as a content creator, some people I imagine, like potentially like me, we're in the early stages, we're kind of freezing up. We're like, oh, wow. So I have everything I need, and
Yeah.
now it's up to me to actually use it in a creative,
Yeah.
intelligent way.
Yeah. That's such a good point. I feel like there's like a positive and negative way of looking at that as well. It's like maybe the negative way is looking at it, which I've heard other people say, if you're not using AI, then you're falling behind.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be using it to keep up. But maybe the positive way of looking at it, which I just thought of as you said that, was you're the one who has to give it the input. Like it's not going to think of everything that you need for you. It's like it's a tool. I think that's the thing. Yeah, that I've learned over this year to look at it as a tool rather than something that's going to do all my work. And in that sense, it's really helped me to refine my thoughts on my content. So who's it targeted at? What am I trying to achieve? Stuff like that, which I think is so key when it comes to content creation, is like, who's this actually for? Who's your target audience? Why are you making this content in the first place? So in that sense, I think it's really positive because it really starts to make you think, about the intentions behind your content.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, is there any other areas where you're using AI currently in your content creation process? And please go through that. But if not, where are some areas where you're not using it yet, and you're thinking of using it in the near term?
Yeah, I think there's a few unexplored areas for me that I haven't really looked into yet, but I think have a lot of potential. And I have seen some of these are definitely out there. Some of them I haven't seen other people do either, but I'm sure there's people doing it. One is generating music with AI. So this again would be good for content creators because there's no royalties attached. You don't have to pay a subscription to any music platform. You can just generate your own music, sound effects as well, and then analytics. So again, like especially the second half of this year, I've really started to take my analytics more seriously, in terms of trying to understand what's working and what's not. And so I have no doubt there's people working on using AI to help analyze your analytics to see what's working. But even for me, like I take notes on what's working and what's not. So I have no doubt I'd be able to put some of those notes into ChatGPT or an AI platform and ask it, for feedback, ask it to analyze the data and, give me information, which I think is very key. Captions as well. Like I said, I use that a little bit with the shorts, but I know there's some really great AI caption platforms out there. So that would super streamline, a lot of people's workflows when it comes to particularly shorts. And then even strategization and business advice. I've used it a little bit for that, particularly at the start of the year, and it was really good, honestly. Some of the business advice it gave me, even just around building like ClickFunnels or building an email list, stuff like that. Ways to build monetization around my channel that aren't specifically related to ad revenue, stuff like that. Like you can really you can get some really valuable information. I found just treating it kind of like a business coach almost. So yeah, there's a few. I mean, you could probably think of ways of using it in all sorts of areas, but they're just a few that I've thought of that I should look into using it more for. So, and then the last one that I didn't really mention was using it for emails, which is I think possibly the most common use that I've found amongst other people, like my peers that aren't necessarily content creators. They'll use it for writing emails. And I found it helpful emailing brands and trying to land sponsorship deals. Really good for that type of thing. So yeah.
Okay, so that's both outgoing emails that you're sending out and also probably responses to emails that you've had from people maybe in tricky situations as well. Okay.
Yeah, it's been really good. I pretty much exclusively, I mean, I added a little bit here and there of my own stuff, but I pretty much landed one deal almost entirely using AI. Okay. I would just send the first email, get a response, copy and paste the response into ChatGPT, ask it to give me another response, back and forth. So, I mean, for all I know, the the representative of the brand could have been using AI themselves. Well. And it could have just been a conversation between AIs. But yeah, I mean, it worked really well, and especially, I think for me, again, as someone who didn't have a lot of experience navigating brand deals, this was early on when I've just started getting brand deal opportunities.
Yep.
It was so helpful just in terms of helping me to navigate all of that. So yeah, again, really powerful tool for that sort of stuff.
Great. Okay. Well, as we wrap up, Nick, I'm keen if we can do a quick run through again of, if you don't mind, of the platforms that you're using, how much they cost, and what you're using them for. Maybe the other way around. So where you're using a particular platform, what its name is, how much it costs off the top of your head, and you can just say free or paid, and what you're actually using it for, if you don't mind, just so people have quick start points to run through. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the first one I definitely recommend is ChatGPT. Totally free. There's a paid version, but you don't need it. That's great for ideation, script writing, emails, generating ideas for thumbnails, titles, like anything text-based. ChatGPT, I reckon, is still the king. Google Bard also is quite good. I think it's not quite as good as ChatGPT yet, but it's also connected to the internet, so that's the main benefit to Bard. With imagery, I've found Photoshop probably the most useful for me so far. But if you don't want to pay for the Photoshop subscription, there is Firefly, Adobe Firefly. So I think you get 25 images a month or something like that on the free plan. Again, there's also a paid version. So if you want more, you can use the paid version. I use that for thumbnails, cleaning up images, that type of thing, and then AI generated backgrounds. And then for editing, the main one I've been using is Opus Clip. So that's the one that takes your long form and turns it into short form. So I think that's the main areas. I think the biggest ones I would recommend trying is ChatGPT. Just remember, the inputs you put in is the quality of the outputs you'll get, and then the Adobe generative AI, so Firefly or Photoshop. They're probably the big ones that I'd recommend to start out with.
Yeah, and it sounds good for Adobe because Photoshop is also Adobe, so they seem to be at the front edge of this. They've got both their Firefly and Photoshop, so yeah, good on them for getting onto this early and building out useful products. Awesome. All right, well, let's leave it there. So, Nick, where can people find you in terms of the internet?
On my website, nickkendall.com.au, my email newsletter, Create Better, or on YouTube, just Nick Kendall. Yeah, how about you?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sanjeesen.com. On the internet, Sanjee Sen on YouTube, Sanjee_investing on the Instagram, and I think Sanjee Sen as well on X, formerly Twitter, classic. And you know what I'm thinking? I think at the end of all of this, I think I need to do some kind of video myself on just initial thoughts on AI, even just for YouTube. Just not even as a user, but just thinking, because there's so many things this conversation has got me thinking about, both just in terms of content creation, but just for life, like you were saying, around business planning, monetization. There's so many things that have just popped up, and I'm just thinking I almost need to just write down what I'm currently thinking, make a video about it, because it'll be interesting to see 6 months, 12 months from now where we are and being able to reference things that we've already thought about.
Totally.
So, yeah, exciting times. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you at the next one. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Okay. I will hit stop.